in the 90s, one of the biggest bands out of the UK was Blur. Me and Sarah, we talked about how they were perceived before their breakout album, Parklife. Okay, so, let me tell you a story, okay? And let's
gather round, children.
Let's gather round. Listen to Grandpa Simpson, because remember, one time I went to get a new heel for my shoe, so I tied an onion to my belt. It was the style at the time. So, anyway, no, I'm not going to go into all that. Which, by the way, annoys the kids so much. Okay, so let's go back in time. Let's take our wonderful, wonderful time machine 30 years ago.
I hate you.
Yeah, I know, I hate me too. To
the halcyon days.
Halcyon days of 1990. We just had a new decade. Hair metal was going away. Nirvana weren't big yet. And the Stone Roses had just basically blown away the British music scene, okay?
Okay.
A lot of British labels were looking for kind of similar bands to that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's this little southern Cockney band called Seymour who changed their name to Blur.
Right. And
released a double A-side single called I Know / She's So High. And it didn't really go anywhere.
Right.
Because it didn't. But then, in early 91, they released a song called There's No Other Way. And the music press absolutely lost their shit.
Really?
Yeah. It got number 6 in the charts. The hook of the song was the drum beat and the bass line. And the style in which they did was unusual for, like, a pop song back in that day.
Okay.
And British music press, falling all over them, thought they were going to be the next big thing. Stone Roses is going to be a little while and release a new album. So there's this Blue band coming along. Hey, they sound really, really good. It was funky as opposed to traditional 4-bar rock. And the rest of their debut album, Leisure, had similar stuff. Nothing really as good. Especially when you consider that I Know wasn't an album track. It was never released on any albums, which would have been in a similar vein. But the problem is that Blur have always been, or were always, up until 1995, a cheeky, chappy, jingly British pop band, And when I say British pop band, I don't just mean like from Britain. I mean, I say British, they were decisively English.
Right.
And Southern English at that.
Oh, yeah.
So they weren't working class, they were the soft Southern shandy drinkers.
Yes.
Now, I want to clarify something before we carry on here. I got a message on our YouTube page a couple of months ago when we were talking about the dichotomy in the UK between North and South, and how in America
it's reversed.
It's reversed. And somebody was
That's how I have to explain it to people here.
And somebody was like, well, in Chicago and New York and Pennsylvania, they have hard-working, working-class people. I understand that. And they have hard-working class people in Colchester. It's just when you think of salt of the earth...
Rust Belt.
Yeah, it's the South in America and it's the North in the United Kingdom.
Right.
Right?
There's hard-working people in all 50 states.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's when you think of lower class working Americans, you think of somewhere with an accent going yeehaw yeehaw, which is not.
I'm gonna cut you.
Well, it's not correct, but that's what most people outside of the United States think.
I gotcha.
And when they think of hard-working British dudes, they think of the dudes in the flat caps and the cotton shirts and stuff like that. Okay. So
Please,
I had to get that,
can we have another?
Yeah, I had to get that off my chest.
Okay.
But the problem is going back to the cheeky chappy English Southern, Cockney style of pop music. Grunge hit the UK in the very, very early 90s.
Right.
So the kids have got a choice to listen to songs about Sunday dinner and war memorials and British commercials, or songs that kind of speak to them, coming from bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, bands like R.E.M.,
Well, yeah, they're going to pick the other. Yeah,
so unfortunately for Blur, Modern Life is Rubbish was not really a huge success. I mean, critically, the critics thought it was good.
Right.
But, it was just, again, it was too English. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, as well, is their next big thing tag also went away. Because after a top 6 single with There's No Other Way, everything between that and Girls and Boys, which was basically their second single to their 10th single, didn't chart in the top 25.
Right.
Now, over here, correct me if I'm wrong, the Billboard Top 200, if anything shows up on that list, it's considered a hit, right?
Correct.
And it's because there's so much music. In the United States, such a big country, so much is released at a certain time. In Britain, it's top 40.
Okay.
But if something doesn't chart in the top 20,
It's not really.
It's not, it's just there.
Right.
And having a bunch of stuff chart under 25, Blue.
I mean, you're a working band, but you're not a hit band.
Yeah. And unfortunately, they started becoming the afterthought in the music press. They went from the next big thing to, oh yeah, Blue. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, I remember those guys. Yeah.
So, they were upset. They were traveling promoting this album that their record label didn't like, that the music press didn't like, in a country they weren't particularly fond of. Not in the I hate America and its lifestyle kind of way, but I hate America because it's not England,
Mm-hmm.
They were homesick. They were drastically homesick. And Damon Albarn was listening to the BBC World Service. And at that time, it was very, very businessy and British and, it was a pre-worldwide global world at that point, right?
I follow.
Okay. So, Damon, depressed, homesick, and hating all this grunge nonsense that he thought, ironically did something punk. And that was continue to write the traditional British pop songs that he liked. The four chords, the characters, and, he wanted to write what he called classic British pop music. So, they start writing this up. Now, the band are about to go up financially because they've spent all their advance and the label doesn't want to... The label can't afford to keep paying them. Not because they're expensive, but they see them as a waste of money and a waste of resources. The band is about to go down. And with their last amount of cash, they recruit Stephen Street to produce an album. And around about this time, this is like early 93, mid 93, the tides are changing in British music, and suddenly British bands are starting to be...
Cool Britannia.
Not quite.
Almost.
Not quite. More along the lines of not quite unhip Britannia. Because the shoegaze...
Aight, Britannia.
Yeah. Decent Britannia. It went from, like, the grunge scene was still there, but at the same time, like, the shoegazing scene, the Manchester scene, all that stuff kind of not faded away, but,
there was a lull.
There was a lull, and then all of a sudden, Elastica, Pulp, Suede started releasing stuff, and the public were like, oh, this British pop music stuff, this pop rock stuff, this could be interesting.
There might be something to that.
Yeah. And I mean, they all got really, really good fanfare.
Right.
Unfortunately for these three bands, the biggest buzz was on this brand new signed band from Manchester who hadn't played a gig in London yet and were the hottest independent band around at the time.
My boys.
The four guys called Oasis?
Uh-huh.
I wonder what happened to them. So what happened is they got in the studio and recorded this album.
Right.
That became Parklife.
Right.
And the record label, excuse my language, the record label is chicken.
Bagok.
They said, oh my God, we're ruined. Because this album is so English and so Southern English and it goes against everything that we've got going on and we need to sound more American.
Right.
And blah, blah, blah. And at that point, Food Records was more or less sold to EMI at that point. Because they couldn't keep running. Now, unfortunately, fortunately for British music, but unfortunately for worldwide music, this is around about the time that Kurt Cobain died.
Right.
And with all due respect to Nirvana, and I love Nirvana. I do. I love Nirvana. Their music was not exactly the happy-go-lucky,
it wasn't meant to be.
No, exactly. And then after the lead songwriter is dead due to an alleged suicide, wink.
Here we go.
No, because the lead singer is dead, he committed suicide. The British music press and the British music fans in general needed something a little more upbeat and jolly and jaunty. And so the vacuum was there. The bands that I mentioned previously had either released their latest releases or weren't ready to release anything yet. And Blur came in. And bang. There we are. Blur are now suddenly...
Bada bing, bada boom.
Blur are now suddenly the most hottest band in Britain. So nobody expected anything of this album. The band thought it would fail commercially, but they thought it was a damn good album. Nobody predicted that it would go on and sell 2.5 million records.